Hello friends, sports card enthusiasts, wrestling card nuts, it's Tom here from CollectAWrestlePalooza. If you're into 80s and 90s pop culture, anything wrestling or pop culture related, you found a channel for you. I'm going to be doing a straightforward mailbag video today, but I'm including an object from a category I have never purchased before, video games. But not only is it a video game, it's a sealed video game from a marquee system, one of the most important video game systems in the history of time. Let's get right to it.
CollectAWrestlePalooza. CollectAWrestlePalooza.
Alright, so I've got 3 boxes to open up today. First one is the video game. And how do I know it's a video game? Well, my wife opened up this box before I got home. She saw the Amazon tape on it, thought it was for her, opened it up, realized it was definitely not for her. I got home, opened it up, and here's what I found. This is an Atari 2600 sealed video game. Robot Tank. Now, it was very inexpensive, so I've been exploring Atari 2600 games because you can buy them sealed for under $30 in some cases, which I think this one was, if not under $20. And I just couldn't believe that a sealed video game in really good condition from that era would be so cheap. The only thing I can think of is that this one does have a hype sticker on it that says not for the Atari 7800 system. So I'm imagining that this one came out later on in the Atari life cycle because the 7800 would have been a thing when it came out. So maybe 2600 games from earlier on are more expensive, but regardless, this is a great pickup in my opinion. This is a classic video game from a classic system. I mean, look at the graphics on the front. There's such nostalgia in this. The box is in pretty nice shape. There's no wear on the corners. It's not crushed. The seal looks intact and perfect. It does have the hang tag on it still. Thought this was just a really nice pickup, a really nice thing to display in my collection. Moving on to box number 2. I think I know what's in here, and the only reason that I know is because it just came in. I just picked it up out of the mailbox, and I know what was just delivered to me. But normally I'll have a stack of boxes that I just wait to open up so that it's always like Christmas when I open it and hopefully forget what the contents are by the time I do break the seal. But I believe this is a card. Again, buying a lot of cards right now because they're so inexpensive. Such a great time to be in the hobby, particularly people that started to covet cards in 2021 and 2022 can finally afford them now. You can get cards that you normally could only buy in 6s and 7s and high grades. This is from a series that I've always wanted to own a card in and could never really afford one, or I should say could never find one at a price that I wanted to pay. This is the Merlin 1993 Gold in an attractive CSG case of one of my favorite wrestlers of all time, Kamala. This is in a 9. Just love Kamala. I think his name was James Harris, one of the first big guys. Now, a little known fact about Kamala, he used to splash people off the top rope. Anyone that's never seen footage of that, you can go on YouTube and you'll see Kimchi, who was his manager slash handler, would, pretend that Kamala was out of control, a la Gary Hart, Abdullah the Butcher. He'd come out, pretend he couldn't speak any English and that he would only be subservient to Kimchi's commands, so he'd come out and pummel his opponent, splash them multiple times, and then Kimchi would have to come and save the day. Just thought that was a great gimmick to draw heat, particularly at a time when WWF was marketed more for kids. They had to find creative ways to draw heat that were not as gruesome as some of the ways to draw heat nowadays in some of the smaller federations with weapons and foreign objects and things like that. So really great way to draw heat. Love this wrestler. Kamala is just an amazing character, huge, larger than life, and really like this card series, the Merlin 1993 Gold. Just a really attractive border, really attractive design. It does have those graphics in the corner there, almost like a modern contemporary, style, 1950s, 1960s, just really neat colors in it. The back of the card is nice as well. It does have the colored photograph of Kamala there as well, which is always nice to not have the gray or the black and white back, but to have a full color glossy back. One thing I don't like about this is they did put the card into a plastic sleeve inside the container. I'm not aware of CSG doing that. I thought CSG was known for having really clear cases, but in this case they did put the plastic sleeve in there too. If folks know if that's a thing they're doing now, please leave a comment and let me know, but I know particularly in the wrestling card community, people like CSG because the clarity of the case. So if that's not something they're doing as standard, let me know. And in the final box today, it does say USPS Media Mail, which means that it's probably a VHS tape, but we'll see. Indeed, it is VHS. This is another sealed UFC Showdown. This is UFC 20, or actually it's UFC 14. I thought I saw two X's, but it's XIV. And this is from the early days of the UFC. They still did use this logo, which I've always thought looks like the fighter Tito Ortiz. Never found evidence that that's true, but to me that caricature looks just like Tito Ortiz, the Huntington Beach bad boy. UFC fans know that around UFC 10 through UFC 20 were not marquee events. There weren't, huge fights or huge names, but it was a growing period for the UFC, and it was still an important period in mixed martial arts. So this box was in really nice condition. The tape is in really good shape. Just thought this was a nice pickup, again, for I believe under $30 if I remember correctly off of eBay. It does feature the following bouts: Todd Butler versus Kevin Jackson, John Morea versus Yuri Volin, Anthony Strickland, Daniel Bobish versus Brian Johnston, and Mark Kerr versus Modi Horenstein. So the only real name on there I know is Mark Kerr. Also includes UFC Heavyweight Championship bout between Mark Coleman versus Maurice Smith. So I take that back. Mark Coleman versus Maurice Smith. I believe that's the one where Mark Coleman lost to Maurice Smith with a kick heard around the world. So this is actually an important event, even better. And regardless, I love these early UFCs. I think buying any of them sealed is going to be something to hold on to into the future, just because all of these events have cultural relevance, not only for UFC, but also just for sports history. This was the beginning of mixed martial arts as a category in sports. So that does it, folks. As you can see, I am branching out in the categories that I'm buying. I'm a little burnt out on cards, I got to admit. I love cards, I love buying cards, I love buying cards for a deal, which is what I'm getting right now, but not selling a lot out of my eBay store just because prices are down and the interest just isn't really there. So I don't want to oversaturate my collection too much at this point. So I'm a little more studious in how I buy cards right now. But like I said, there are some other categories out there that I still think there are killer deals, VHS and video games in particular, and then the Atari 2600 sealed video games. I just can't believe how inexpensive those are. So again, if video game as a sealed collectible continues to grow as a category, you got to imagine these marquee cartridges from the first video game system that was popular will continue to gain value as well. Hope you learned something today, or at least got some inspiration to keep going in your hobby. Have a great week.
CollectAWrestlePalooza. CollectAWrestlePalooza.